Hello and welcome back to the Road to 2000. As always, my name is Caleb Denby and I will be your driver on this journey. Tonight is sort of a bittersweet night. It's potentially the final Road to 2000 on Tuesday nights. My class is actually switching with Beginner Breakdown, which generally takes place on Monday nights. So in this normal time slot next week, you can expect to see the wonderful Alex Mullering teaching you some more of those wonderful basics. I'll be moving to Monday nights. Hopefully most weeks we can still get that online, although especially with the upcoming Rapid and Blitz tournament, whose new merch I'm repping, we're going to have a lot going on at the chess club, so looking forward to it. Tonight I wanted to talk about something kind of fun, and I think there are still some lessons that we can draw from it. I want to talk about some of the most famous odds games in recent memory. So of course, what is an odds game? It's a game where one player is pretty clearly stronger than the other player. So to try to make it a little bit more fair, they give them some kind of odds, either piece odds or time odds is especially common these days, especially for like hustlers trying to play blitz. So to start with, I want to talk about one of the games from the king of odds givers, Paul Morphy. So of course, Paul Morphy played a lot of opponents that he was head and shoulders better than. And so to make it a little bit more fun, oftentimes he would give them odds. So let's just start with this one. On the board here, we see that Paul's victim in this case, Theodore Knight, good chess name, Theodore Knight, is up a full rook and a knight. Paul Morphy is starting without either of these pieces. And so I kind of want to go through, see if we can put ourselves in Theodore Knight's shoes and Paul Morphy's shoes, see if we can create chances and defend against them. So I really like Paul's opening choice here, Morphy's opening choice. You get e4, e5, and the King's Gambit. So this is a really great opening choice because oftentimes White will attack straight out of the opening in an opening like the King's Gambit, and these two pieces sometimes never even find the time to get involved. So maybe he won't be missing those here. Knight accepts the gauntlet, takes on f4, and we get knight f3, g5, and bishop c4. So already, I kind of want to say, pretty terrible practical play by Theodore Knight. If someone is giving you odds and they play something like the King's Gambits, really, all you want to do is get your extra pieces into the game. Once your extra pieces are playing in the game, they really shouldn't be able to just walk all over you because you have more pieces than them. So while this is normal King's Gambit quote-unquote theory, taking the pawn and holding on to it with g5, against someone who's already down a rook and a knight, probably it's a little bit better just to develop. So out of curiosity, are you guys familiar with ways that black can develop rather quickly against the King's Gambit? Maybe what line should Mr. Knight have chosen?
The Falkbeer counter gambit?
Yeah, the Falkbeer counter gambit is a great one. So as usual, against these tricky gambits in 1e4, e5, black can very, very often either give some material back or at least just find this nice freeing move with d5. The nice thing about e4, e5 is both sides have played the best first move, which is going to allow your pieces to get into the game very, very quickly if you are able to break in the center with d5. So yeah, 2d5 I think is probably a very simple way to get your pieces in the game. But even after takes in knight f3, it's not too late for black to just kind of calm down a little bit and get developed. No need to go crazy with g5. But that's what he goes for. We get bishop to c4, and now queen to e7. So Theodore's a little bit afraid, so he's going to defend his f7 pawn. We get d4 by Morphy, d5 by black. So maybe Theodore Knight knows a little bit about what he's doing. He's like, okay, I'm up material. I just need to get my pieces in the game, and then I can succeed. So I actually like this move d5 by Theodore Knight. We get bishop takes d5, and now I think black plays a pretty unfortunate move. So this obviously isn't the move that loses the game. Pretty tough to lose the game yet. But from this move onwards, you sort of get the feeling that Morphy is in control. So black to move here. Let's come up with some candidate moves. Probably everything wins, but there are a couple moves that I like quite a bit better than the rest. Yeah, go ahead. If you have some ideas. So c6. Okay, you played the move that Theodore Knight played. So not in bad company. So obviously, c6, black is still winning, but we'll see that Morphy is really going to get the pieces flowing after this move. So we want to kill the game, deaden the game, to make sure we don't get embarrassed and lose to somebody who gave us a full rook and a knight to start with. So there are a couple moves that are, I would call them game killers here, where there's just no opportunity for white to really mess with us once we get these in. Yeah, knight f6, this move is very desirable, but you are playing with a little bit of fire in terms of your g5 pawn. Maybe knight f6 is a good move. Okay, to be honest, knight f6 wins, c6 also wins, everything wins because you're up a rook and a knight, but so
playing bishop to e6?
yeah, so bishop e6, and what's the justification behind it? Why can we play this move?
Well, you're threatening to take one of these pieces that could attack you or something.
Right. Okay, you're getting developed, and you're threatening to trade off one of your opponent's only attacking pieces.
Right,
So.
and you can't retake with the pawn.
Right, because we've pressured down the e-file. So what I meant, the justification, why aren't we worried about bishop takes b7?
It's just wrong.
It's just wrong.
You're already up.
I mean, yeah, we are already up material, but giving back a full rook would be kind of extensive.
Yeah.
Or desperate, I don't know. But black has a tactic, of course.
Oh, queen check, pick up the rook.
Yeah, we do just have queen b4, and bishop b7 is just unplayable due to this move. So,
Thank you.
yeah. So even though Morphy is giving the odds to the player with the black pieces, player with the black pieces could still do some tactics, right? You can't be so afraid of your opponent that you're just like trying to. So the way that a lot of people lose odds games is they try to play the safest move every move. And as a result, they just start kind of playing suboptimal moves. And if you play enough of those, eventually chances start to come. So bishop e6, I think, if black had played this move, blunders notwithstanding, I struggle to see how Morphy would ever even create chances here. It seems very, very difficult, right? Once this bishop is gone, it seems very tough to do much with white. But instead, c6 was played. And so I criticized this move a little bit. What do you think Morphy had in mind against c6?
Well, you're going to have to play bishop takes f7.
You're going to have to play bishop takes f7. I absolutely agree. So let's go get him.
If you want to, well, that's questionable.
So yeah, black chose queen takes. Maybe king takes was also okay, but.
Right. Well, now you can play knight takes g5.
So knight g5, I think, is going to allow black to potentially play queen to g6. And then maybe someday we will actually develop our pieces.
It's a thing.
It is a thing.
Yeah. Well, and then you can play bishop takes f4. Because the knight is holding the e4 pawn.
Right. So we might get some material back in this line.
Right.
On these squares, but I would be more concerned about the speed at which black is able to develop here. Right. This is threatened. We can defend it somehow, but now I'm going to go knight e7. I might even shudder to think castle my king in this game.
Shuddering?
But Morphy has yeah, it's this very similar idea. I'll just go ahead and show. Rather than knight g5, allowing the queen to keep us boxed out, he just goes knight e5. He says, this g-pawn doesn't matter. I'm already down a rook and a knight. I'm going to go for the kill. So knight e5, I think, is the best practical try. And now this allows us just to develop very fluidly out with queen to h5 check. So you kind of get here by force after c6. And so you go from a position where you're up a rook and a knight for nothing to a position where you're up a rook and a knight and a bishop, but now your king's on e7 and you're dealing with these kinds of threats. So the task now with Morphy is to keep it interesting. How do we keep the attack flowing and get more pieces involved?
Castle probably kingside.
Yeah, castle's kingside I think is probably just as good as what Morphy played. So Morphy throws in this move h4 first. So probably you were intending to do something like this or g3 after you castle.
I was going to do h4.
Yeah. So h4 first I think is good. It also prevents black from playing the natural move pawn to h6 because while this rook is still here, we still have threats down the h file. So instead, black goes g takes h4. Now, mission accomplished. We undermine the f pawn, so now we can castle.
Right.
To his credit, Theodore Knight continues to try to hold it all together with bishop h6.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Just needs to defend everything. He's got g4 covered, so there's no knight fork. But now, Morphy finds a way to bring in the final attackers.
Bishop takes f.
How did the tactics work out? I'll just take back, or maybe even rook takes.
Well, no. You could play knight to g4, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. So black does have this covered, and so black is thrilled to trade off any attackers here.
Knight back to. The only thing I can see is like knight back to f3.
Okay, you could come back. Let's actually just pause for a moment and take some time. So, as always in chess, even when you're down a rook and a piece and another piece, at some points it's useful to stop and take this. I don't want to call it positional approach, but a useful question to always ask yourself, whether the position is tactical or positional, is how can I improve my pieces?
Wait a minute.
So go ahead, just wait a minute, hold on to that thought. I'm going to let everybody think for a little bit, and then we'll discuss. So how can I improve my pieces? So white has a lot of very, very active pieces, but there are still improvements to be made. So that's where Morphy is thinking here. So go ahead, take some time, and whenever you've got it, you can raise a hand. All right. What do you think, Alex?
B3. So I can bring the bishop up?
Yeah, b3 is absolutely what Morphy played. So black has us stopped up on this f file. Maybe we were looking at some ideas of trying to attack this guy, but black has this pretty well covered. So we ask ourselves, what's the worst piece? Potentially this bishop on c1. Conveniently, this king rests on a dark square diagonal, so Morphy plays b3, ready to activate the bishop. Theodore Knight continues his resolute defense with knight to d7. Of course, we're going to bring the bishop out now with check, and black tries pawn to c5. So let's pause again. Think about how we can improve our pieces. There's no knockout punch here just yet, but Morphy just keeps improving to the maximum until something cracks. And to his credit, Theodore Knight, after c6, so far has defended perfectly acceptably. He is completely winning in this position. Okay, so our queen is very active, our knight is very active, our bishop is well placed. That, of course, leaves this rook on f1. So what can we do to activate this rook on f1? Yeah, so we can, there are two things we could try. We could try to open up the f file somehow, but I would agree that this seems pretty difficult. Or we can try to find a new file for it. So the question to ask yourself is, which file can white try to force open in many lines?
Rook to d1?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something about Morphy's odds games that are somewhat surprising. Yes, there's often a beautiful tactical finish, but leading up to it, there's all these just nice positional moves. He says, what's my worst piece? Where can I put it? And he finds the d1 square. So first was mentioned rook e1. Yeah, this move, I don't fully see how we're ever getting in with the rook, right? This e-pawn is actually pretty stable. Not a lot of chances for it to move out of the way. But if we go to d1, of course, these pawns are already in tension, and opening up this diagonal is definitely something that could happen in the near future. And finally, Theodore Knight cracks under the pressure. So give you a little whiplash. We'll flip the board here. Black to move, there are in fact still a number of ways to win. Most moves are still winning for black. But let's see if you guys can find not just a move, but kind of a 2 to 3 to 4 move plan. How can we complete development and finally shut down this initiative that white has? How do we untangle here? This is your chance to beat Paul Morphy. We've made it this far.
We can beat him. Yeah, we should call Morphy. You gotta play b6 or something, don't you?
So b6 is one of the moves that win, but how are you following up? Like, let's say white actually captures on c5 after b6.
You follow up with a knight.
Knight takes c5, knight takes e5.
Knight takes c5.
Yeah, knight takes c5. Okay, so we'll go ahead and look at this on the board.
Actually, you could actually, yeah, you have to do that.
Yeah, knight
You have to do that.
knight e5 might get you in a little bit of trouble.
Right.
Um,
And also it gives, well, your king is still.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree that black should be winning here, but I also think that maybe we haven't fully locked things down, right? I'm looking and seeing all kinds of ideas, maybe even something as crazy as knight to f7. This kind of idea could cause you problems when
Right.
I'm doubling up on c5, and okay, you're taking my guys, but you know, again, this is not so comfortable for black. You're going to have to do some running. Yeah, maybe this one specifically doesn't work, but lots of ideas still. So b6, you know, it does win, but you still have to be quite careful. I would say that there's one move that kind of sticks out to me as being very, very clean, a very nice solution for black to step out of a lot of these nasty, nasty ideas.
King f8.
Yeah, absolutely. I think king f8 is the cleanest way to continue. So what are some of the ideas? Why does king f8 stick out to you?
Well, because g7 looks like a good hiding spot.
Yeah, so we could potentially put this king onto g7. And I think even more importantly, we're giving ourselves a lot more options for how to deal with this diagonal. Right? We're going to be able to develop this knight out. And once this knight gets out, and our king's on g7, then our rook is playing, and once our rook is playing, then the rest is kind of history. So after king f8 here, I think Morphy would be kind of in a bad way. There's still a lot of tactical ideas you can try, like I would be really reluctant to capture on d7, but let's just do it for example so we can break through here. Just like you said, g7 is going to be a nice hiding spot. We also have knight e7, and the pieces are coming in. Once the pieces are coming in, you know, the material kind of speaks for itself. So I think king f8 would have been a really nice way to continue. Now, nobody in the in-person audience suggested the losing move, but someone online did. So, so it's very, very natural to want to do what black did in this position. Black, of course, captured on e5, but this move loses the game. So I'll flip one more time, white to move and win.
You can't do that.
I cannot do that. So try to calculate it all before we say anything. Morphy has done it.
Can
Okay, what do you think?
bishops take c5?
Yep, and then what happens on the various black
Well,
options?
king has to go to.
Right, so
you go to different places.
these two moves have the same problem, right?
Yeah.
So what's that?
So I'm thinking.
Right. So this is where our handy dandy rook comes into play.
Right.
Pawn takes e5, check, and hitting the queen. This is going to be,
So you have to
enough
play
material
e6
back.
or something?
So you do have to play king to e6. So I'll let you guys think from this position about bishop c5, king to e6. So if you go d5, I'll go king to d7.
I assume that you take it. Well, the bishop is taken with c5 pawn with check.
Yes, so bishop c5, king e6.
Right. King e6.
Yes.
Right. And then you take pawn takes knight.
Okay, I mean, I'll go, let me be cautious here. Yeah, I will play queen g6.
Oh, I got it.
And then queen to e8 check.
I've interposed, right? So I'll go ahead and put this on the board. You can win my queen here,
Oh, I see.
but I'm not so sure that the queen's enough anymore, right? Like just for example, takes. I have a lot of squares covered, so you probably need to come this way. Come bishop e6. And at the end of the day, I have two rooks, a knight, and a bishop for the queen, which is pretty good. Obviously, my king is still a bit weak, but I think black would be winning pretty comfortably here. So something better.
Something better. You want something better. What is this? Okay.
Any big ideas? Okay, we'll start cheating then.
Hold on. Wait a second.
White to move here.
It might start when the king is down.
Yep, so
King is on e7.
back here?
Yeah.
Okay.
What I'm thinking is that the queen is the only thing protecting that knight. If you take pawn takes knight, then he can't retake with the queen.
Right. So queen g6 is still probably...
Right, but then you hit him with the queen, with the bishop takes c5 check.
Yeah, I think we're
And
transposing,
then
right?
you're getting the rook involved maybe too, maybe not.
Yeah, so still here you can
Well,
pick
it's
up the
the same
queen,
thing,
but
right?
yeah, we transpose. Not quite enough. So yeah, bishop c5, king e6 is right. And then Alex?
Queen e8 and then knight e7, d5.
Yeah, queen e8 check is the knockout punch here. And the game does actually finish knight e7, d5, and there is nowhere left to run for this king.
I was thinking of saying that later. No, that's a good move.
Black could have tried queen e7, but now we are actually getting quite a bit of material, I think. Maybe there's more forcing. I can give check first, and then check, and then check, and takes. Okay, maybe I haven't done the most convincing job here either. Queen e7. Okay, maybe I should do this. Yeah, Probably I should do this. And then take. And all your stuff is just still hanging. And white is winning. Take here next, go here and here. All good stuff. But Theodore Knight didn't even try, just went queen knight e7, allowed for d5. So this is kind of the quintessential early chess history kind of odds games that you would see. They actually look a lot like early games without odds, where white goes crazy and sacrifices something, and then black takes all the material and then gets checkmated. These are all the games that have been written down from old history. So I wanted to move on to one that did not go so well for the odds giver. It's a very interesting game because Capablanca is playing, but Capablanca is being given odds. How does this make any sense? Who does this Ramon Iglesias guy think he is giving Capablanca odds? So there's a twist to this game, but maybe we should just look at the game first. So this one, Capablanca kind of just puts on a clinic here. We get knight f3, we get the Petrov, and I really don't like this move by Ramon Iglesias, the odds giver. It's going to open up the e file and sort of lead to kinds of positions where it's not going to be very, very complex. You're going to have a symmetrical structure. There's going to be one open file on the board. Capablanca is going to be able to use the major pieces, as we'll see. So I would have preferred to see something a lot more closed, even something like d3. Just keep it locked down, keep chances alive. Instead, we get this. Rather funnily, Capablanca just responds with knight takes e4. So what's normally the problem with this line?
Queen e7?
Yeah, normally white goes queen e2, and black's in a little bit of trouble. But queen e2 is illegal here. Unlucky. So here, white just goes d4. Capablanca does follow up with d6, and bishop e7. So pretty stark difference compared to last game. Capablanca is playing simple chess, developing his pieces, keeping his pieces on defended squares. We get c4, Capablanca castles, knight c3, knight c6, a3, a6, bishop d2. Now a slightly weird move, b6 by Capablanca. White goes ahead and castles. We get bishop to d7 now. And yeah, okay, I don't know what this b6 move is all about, but that's fine. Everything else he's been doing is great. King to b1 and knight a5. So I like this method of playing by Capablanca as well. Like you could theoretically go much slower, rook e8, maybe bishop f8, just try to play on the e file. But your opponent is castled queenside, you're castled kingside. Even though you're up a lot of material, doesn't mean you should just throw away all the chess principles. You should come after this king on the queen side. That's exactly what Capablanca does. So knight a5, rook c1, knight b3, attacks two things, and then bam, c5. So not in a rush to trade his good pieces for white's bad pieces, even though he's up a ton of material. Just breaks with c5 and tries to activate the rest of his forces here. d5, rook e8 does get played, h4, and then b5. Just very simple chess. Opponent's king is here. We have a queen. He doesn't. We're going to attack, and our attack's going to be better because we have a queen. g4, knight to d4 is a very good practical move, trying to induce knight takes d4, which does get played. And now, of course, following this, the open c file is going to be difficult for white to deal with. We get bc4, knight f6, bishop c4. Capablanca says, you hung a pawn. I don't care. Fair enough. Bishop d3, bishop f3, rook h3. Capablanca says, I will keep taking your pawns. No way do you checkmate me here. h5, bishop e6, rook g3, g6, f4, bishop h4, rook g1. Okay, and I sort of blitzed through this game because honestly there's not much to talk about. Capablanca was up a queen, he developed all his pieces, and now he's winning. So here, obviously white is trying to break through on g6. So let's find a couple good defensive moves for Capablanca this game, and then we can wrap up Capablanca's adventure here. So how do we deal with white's threats to our g6 pawn, and of course behind that pawn our king? It's really the first time white has posed any kind of problem to black at all. before this, it sort of just seemed like black was maybe the one who should have been giving the odds. Yeah, Alex?
I might play G6, G5.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Okay, so anticipating that white is going to try to break things open with something like f5, we should definitely keep this g5 idea in mind. That being said, if we do it immediately while this pawn is still in f4, I think that perhaps this is not going to work out quite as cleanly as we want. G6 is still going to be able to open things up. Of course, the idea of G5 would be to prevent the G file from opening. But for example, I think a move like bishop d5 would be perfectly fine. Preparing to meet something like f5 with G5. This would make quite a bit of sense. But even simpler by Capablanca than either of these ideas. Let's pretend there's a queen on c1, right? And so we have something we're actually afraid of. What would we do if it were a more realistic position to defend our king?
I assume you could always make a, you want that, but I assume you could make the king move to h8 or something if you wanted to avoid a lot of this.
Yeah, no, it's just all the normal natural defensive moves. So king h8 comes to mind. I think that might be the one that Capablanca chose. Yeah, he does play king h8 here. I was also just going to mention, simple chess. Play something like queen f6, defend your g6 pawn, try to regain control over the light squares. All just very, very normal moves are all you need here because you're up a queen. So king h8, and of course, like following up, we have ideas of coming to rook g8. We're just going to contest this open file, and we will be doing well. So f5, Capablanca is not afraid. We get a trade. He says, sure, I'm fighting back on this file now, and you just have absolutely nothing. So king h8, rook g8, very common defensive idea. Works even better when you're up a queen. Okay, so rook g2, takes, queen f6, and this game is over. Ramon Iglesias resigns against Jose Raul Capablanca. So what's the catch? Who is this random guy giving queen odds to Capablanca? Does anyone know? Has anyone heard of this game?
Fictitious name or something?
Nope. Real players, the real Jose Raul Capablanca. It's just that he was playing this game in 1893, which if you know anything about Capablanca, that would make him 4 years old. So this is Toddler Capablanca, absolutely crushing Ramon Iglesias. He did have queen odds, but he also kind of just outplayed him the entire game. So even at 4 years old, Capablanca knew a thing or two about how to develop pieces and fight back. Yeah, Alex?
Wait, do we really believe Capablanca's 4 years old playing this way?
That's the story. Maybe it's a little apocryphal, but yeah, the story behind this game, Iglesias, Capablanca was 4 years and 10 months, so nearly 5. So, I mean, yeah. Now who cares? Yeah, I mean, I didn't do in-depth research to see if this story was a little apocryphal, but it's a fun story. Capablanca, 4 years old, just crushing it.
I'm really not sure what champion Capablanca could play better with black.
Yeah, no, I would say this was a very, very strong chess game. Again,
The only inaccuracy,
b6 just doesn't make a lot of sense. Everything else he did really did make a lot of sense. You could argue maybe he should be playing d5 in this structure. d5 makes more sense than whatever this b6 bishop d7 thing is. But yeah, knight a5 to b3 followed by c5 and knight d4 is pretty high level stuff. I don't know what all that was about for a 4-year-old. All right, should we check? Should we check? Let's see. Let's see. Nope, d5, knight a5, best moves. Sometimes lucky. Also knight b8, best stockfish move. There you go, bishop g4. b6 is worse by a full 0.3. Yeah, much worse, 0.3, yeah. Okay, So that's what odds games looked like in the 1800s. So you have the Morphy game. I skipped over a Steinitz game where basically the same thing happened. White sacrificed all the pieces and won by checkmate. So surely in the year 2020, things are going to be different, right? Things are going to be different. Humans came a long way in chess. We've got our hero, Hikaru Nakamura, manning the black pieces against the villain, Komodo, the chess engine. So these days, odds games have not really been in favor. You don't see a lot of exhibitions with grandmasters giving like crazy odds or something. It's just not quite as interesting as some other things, I think. But this is still a fun way to level the playing field a little bit against computers. So I wanted to take a look at this match that Hikaru had against PlayKomodo. The match did not go so well for him. I think this was in the fall of 2020. So throughout the match, Hikaru was given various kinds of 2 pawns up handicaps. So here you see the F pawns and the C pawns are missing. And it's kind of interesting. I want to see how Komodo is able to just outcalculate Hikaru in about 10 moves. Just 10 moves is all it takes from down 2 pawns to significantly better. So let's take a look. Komodo starts with E4, developing pieces. E5, knight F3, knight C6, bishop C4, bishop C5. So white to move here, we already have a number of problems to solve with the white pieces. We're kind of in trouble. So white to move, how do we finish development in this position? Our opponent has made castling illegal. Highly unfortunate for us. We have all these pieces that need to get into the game. What can we do? We have no c-pawn to support our center. It's all very, very sad.
D4.
G4 would be a lot.
No, I mean D4.
D4. That makes a lot more sense. So what's so good about D4?
It supports the knight to G5 move.
Okay, so of course, it's activating our bishop along this diagonal. I agree. But even more importantly, perhaps it's interfering with this bishop along this diagonal. It's going to give us a lot better chance to finish development. Now, I think this is, this move by Hikaru is technically correct. It's a fine move, but I think this is probably his worst move of the game, practically speaking. If you go bishop takes d4 here, white still cannot castle. And the worst thing that happens to you is this gets traded for this, and then you can finish development. However, he goes knight takes d4. So now Komodo to move and look like Paul Morphy.
Obvious.
Yep, go ahead.
Bishop takes F7.
Yeah, just like in the 1800s, people are still losing chess games to bishop takes f7 and knight takes e5.
Right.
So black has only one move to still be okay here, which is king to e7. Not so natural to do this with your pieces when there's a bishop here, but your knight is going to cover this square well enough in the short term. And if you play like a computer, then you are just, you're going to survive, and you can be minus like 2. Hooray. Instead, Hikaru plays king to f8. And let's go ahead and play like Komodo. White to move, what's the natural follow-up? You just castle with check, pretty good. Knight to f6, and now Komodo plays a move that is maybe not so natural, but it's a move that both solves problems for white and creates threats against the black position. So we've got some problems of our own, right? This is here, this knight is active, we're down a piece, we're down a couple pawns still. Well, just one pawn now. So we need some way to keep the pieces flowing. Because if you take your time here, black will eventually develop his pieces, right? I don't know, d pawn somewhere, bishop out. Really unclear how these two pieces are ever gonna get back in the game. But still. Also, I think our laptop might not be plugged in, Ben. I'm plugged in on my end, so it would be downstairs. B4?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are a lot of double checks available. I like the move b4, but we can actually do the same idea while creating another threat. So maybe b4 is reasonable, but I mean, let's just say bishop b6. Yeah, knight c4, maybe I go knight e2. Honestly, it looks similar to the main line, but you kind of have this idea just immediately. Looking good now, Ben. So rather than knight c4, I think it is quite nice to attack this bishop, because if you go knight c4, maybe like check. So you go knight d3. And the point is now, these kinds of moves are no longer so scary, because we are attacking this bishop, and so our rook will not die. And also, what's the other threat that we're making with knight to d3? Yeah, we're threatening e5. So we get to do both things at once. b4 probably is just like a slightly worse version of this. Maybe you'll get what we had in the game, which is knight to e2 check and knight takes c1. Although here, still this looks quite good for white.
Maybe like knight f3 is the real problem in the piece.
Yeah, okay. This piece hanging is a much bigger problem, actually, yeah. Yeah, this is not going to be enough. We just go d6. We're blockading. We're activating. Black is crushing it. So knight to d3 targets this bishop, doesn't allow for these discovered checks. Black, of course, does still have this double check. Can't take the bishop because the knight attacks the king. But we just go king h1. And after knight takes c1, we go knight takes c5. This knight is trapped, and white is regaining the piece. Plus we're castled, plus black's position looks like this. And this is now plenty of compensation for all of one pawn. So how long did that take? 10 moves? Yeah, 10 moves, and white is winning. So that's how long Hikaru Nakamura could last against PlayKomodo in this game. So to follow up, Hikaru tries queen to e7. Queen takes c1, of course. Now d6. We're going to retreat. King to g8 to unpin the knight from the king. Just knight to c3. Hikaru, rather smartly does not go pawn hunting here. You just need to develop your pieces. Knight to e4. There's a lot of things that white can do. Probably just queen to e3 is winning the game. So bishop b6, e5, of course. We just want to open things up. Takes. Queen c5, queen e1, rook f8, queen g3, knight h5, check, queen e3. And after queen to c5, Hikaru had actually just seen enough and went ahead and resigned. Kind of zoomed through the end of that game there. Part of that is because the computer's moves might not be the most intuitive, but the intuitive moves also win in these positions. It's just that Komodo is like calculating a ton, and so it can kind of do whatever it wants because it knows it sees all the tricks. In this position, why did Hikaru resign? I think because queen to e7 is a rather difficult threat to stop. Also, white can just pick up all of these pawns over here, and there's just not much you can do with black. Rook d1 to d8.
Was this the odds match where Nakamura could use Rook or something, or was that a different odds match?
I believe that was a different odds match.
Okay.
I don't think this would happen if Hikaru had access to Ribka.
He also lost that match, right?
To my memory, he did, yeah. So Julian in the class is talking about there was another odds match of this kind where I think Hikaru had access to another chess engine. He said Ribka, that could be it. But I don't know the details, so look that one up at your own risk. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this game and compare this match that Hikaru had against PlayKomodo. Again, Hikaru didn't get swept. I think he had 3 draws out of the match. I think he lost 1.5 to 6.5, so 3 draws and 5 losses. What's the difference between this match where white is giving up 2 pawns versus another match we're going to look at where the same engine, Komodo, was giving full piece odds to actually a significantly weaker grandmaster than Nakamura. And so to look at that, I wanted to look at this real chess position. I know, there's a first for everything on the road to 2000, a real chess position. So let's follow along with that Hikaru game. We got bishop c4, bishop c5. Now hypothetically, in real chess, if white tries what white tried in the game against Hikaru, somewhat counterintuitively, king f8, best move, And with these 2 pawns on the board, black is completely winning. With these 2 pawns off the board, white is doing quite well. And so this is, I think, the huge downside that Hikaru had in his match that maybe went a little bit unnoticed. The opening patterns, the patterns that are ingrained into these people's memories, are just going to be wrong. Pawns are missing, files are open, diagonals are open. It's potentially even weirder than like chess 960, which already messes up these top grandmasters. And so I think Hikaru was falling victim to this quite a bit, and that's why you see moves like the last one, where by move 10, doesn't matter that Hikaru started with 2 extra pawns, he's just dead lost. Because here, king f8, by far the best move, and it's like -3. Here, king f8, very bad move, it's like +1, which is fatal against a computer. With that in mind, I do want to move on to this other match. So this time, our hero, and we will look from the hero's side, is David Smerdon up against PlayKomodo. So rather than Hikaru's odds, which were the f pawn and the c pawn, in other matches it was the f pawn and the b pawn. They sort of moved around which pawns it was. This time, Komodo is starting without the king's knight. And the way that Smerdon handles this game is pretty indicative of how this entire match went. He played a 6-game match against Komodo. He won 5 of them without too much difficulty. There was some grinding he had to do in a couple endgames. And he lost 1 game because he made a very simple blunder, because he's a human, aren't we all? In this game, we get d4, e6, e4, d5. So I wanted to ask what you guys thought of this choice by David Smerdon. He's playing an odds game against a chess engine. He chooses the French defense. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? I've told you the results of the match, so you might already know what I think. But what's going on with the French?
I don't like it.
Yeah, Julian doesn't like it.
The reason why is because, like, I would try to open the position and trade as many pieces as possible. When we play the French, keep it closed, and pieces stay on the board. I wouldn't want to trade pieces.
Yeah, so this is like the normal line of thinking for odds givers and odds receivers. If you've been given odds, it makes sense to open the position. We talked about in that Capablanca game. I didn't like White's decision to open the e file early on, just allowing for simpler play. And the French is going to allow White to steer the game into more closed positions, where it's going to be more difficult to trade pieces. So that is the big argument against choosing the French. Now, we'll see that maybe Smerdon had some idea of what he was doing, though. Does anyone have a different take? Yeah, Alex?
So, I mean, it's an old way of thinking, because, back even when Smerdon played Deep Junior, they wanted to close the position because they thought computers weren't good at closed positions.
Right.
Not good at maneuvering. So that's probably where Smerdon was thinking, was he's not even considering being up a piece, it's just he wants a closed position.
Okay, so I have a different take than everyone here. So what Alex just said is the late 90s, early 2000s way of thinking, which is these computers are great at tactics and great at calculating, but in the slower, closed types of positions where the chess kind of revolves around plans and pawn breaks, computers were lagging behind for some number of years. Now, I honestly don't think that that's true at all in present chess. But I think what Smerdon did is not so ridiculous. So let's take a look at a few more moves this game. We saw knight c3, knight f6, e5, knight fd7, f4, c5. So what Smerdon has done is, I believe his line of thinking is he's chosen an opening where the king's knight is a very, very important piece for applying pressure early on. You see this knight come to f3, you see this knight threaten to come to g5, and like checkmate black. You also see this knight come to f3, where it's very, very necessary to control the d4 pawn. And that is the huge gap in White's position for playing the French. Without this knight able to support this pawn, you see the engine immediately say, I can't support this pawn on d4, I'm going to take on c5. Try something more normal, like knight to e2. I think probably takes right away. And we are actually going to get more piece trades than you would expect from a closed position in the French. Like, okay, you can obviously keep pieces on the board, but you're running quite a bit of risk moving around so much. So I'm curious. I'm open to dissent here, but I think that's where David Smerdon was coming from. What do you think, Julian? Do you still?
I'm like sort of surprised that the computer went for this option. Like I would have thought it would go e5 right away, just to keep things like locked,
Yeah.
Like knight c3. It also like knight c3 is weird because it also lets black go de, and then knight f6 like threatening a whole bunch of trains.
Yeah. So this is potentially also a fault in the programming of PlayKomodo. So to my knowledge, I don't think they tweaked too much of the engine's settings to make this play, like give odds better. I think they were just saying, yeah, this is Komodo, beat Komodo with an extra knight. So
you're totally right though, because the advance just isn't playable anymore. You go knight c6, queen b6, d4 is undefended.
This as well. And I think this is what David had in mind. If you play the advance, black is going to win your d-pawn. Because you have no kingside knight. So potentially a very counterintuitive approach by David, going for an opening like the French, but you kind of need this piece in the French. This is what I was thinking. So here you see the engine just take on c5, and after knight c6, a3, now black takes on c5, and David does start to take this kind of approach where he's like, I'm going to open the position at all costs. We're going to trade pieces, and I will have more pieces than my opponent. So very responsible way of playing. Now takes, and your note on being surprised that the engine went for this knight c3 line. Here, I really think this is where Komodo could have benefited greatly from just one or two tweaks in the programming. There is really no objective reason why you shouldn't play a move like queen e2 here with white. You're down a full piece. You should keep the queen on the board. Komodo just takes on d8, and we as humans, I don't know a single human who plays a lot of chess who would take on d8 here and just be like, yeah, I'm down a piece, but this is probably the best I can do. Like you want to keep the queen on the board, you want to take your material back, you want to try to get your opponent, right? So queen takes d8, not such a great try from Komodo, and then from here it's just very, very clean play by Smerdon. He gets his king to a reasonable position, develops his pieces, and then he just starts playing with an extra piece. He says, yeah, let's trade light square bishops. I'll develop. He says, yeah, I'll get my pieces in the game. Goes e5, knight e6, and here he has to maneuver some tricks, but he says, okay, you want to win my f7 pawn, win my f7 pawn. I don't care, I'm up a piece. As long as we're getting another piece off the board, sure. Takes on f7, we get rook g6. And now he's a grandmaster and he has an extra piece. He repeats for some time, takes f6, brings his knight around to a more active position, repeats for time, takes the b5 pawn, brings the knight around again, takes the c5 pawn, and now he starts to push, brings in the king, and now it's just going to be checkmate. And that is the end of the game. So maybe there's hope for humans yet. These weird two pawns positions, I think, are deceptively quite difficult for humans to play. Objectively, it is still massive odds. A computer would beat another computer from that position, I think, close to 100%, if not 100% of the time. But as humans, we're very reliant on these patterns. And given time to prep, as David was for this match, he was able to kind of realize, hey, all these patterns in the French where black attacks d4, kind of in every single line ever, white needs to play knight f3 or knight e2 and defend the d-pawn. And now all of a sudden, that's illegal. So David is able to use these patterns that chess players are familiar with, that humans are good at, to his advantage very effectively. And so that's a huge credit, I think, to him in this match. And clearly his strategy worked out, winning 5 of the 6 games. Okay, so I think that is sort of where I'm going to call it for the night. Do you guys have any questions for me about odds games or any of the lessons we're taking away? Okay, excellent. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Just a brief recap. The one thing that I would say to take away from these games in your own chess games. Obviously, you can apply some principles to when you're up a massive amounts of material, but really, at its heart, chess is a game about improving your pieces. We saw that in the Morphy game. Morphy, every turn, improves his pieces, makes it tricky, and even in these other games, you see everybody just fighting to make their pieces better, whether or not they're up 2 pawns or up a knight to start with, or they're the ones giving their odds. It's all about improving your pieces to the maximum. Okay, if you're watching online, please do stay tuned. We'll have Grandmaster Elshan Muradiabadi coming in to teach the next class, running from 7:30 to 8:30, and that should be in just a couple minutes. As always, my name is Caleb Denby. Thank you very much for joining me on the road to 2000, and I will see you next Monday. Thanks.